All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful passage from the Quran's third chapter, Al-Imran. And what's so cool about it is how it's structured. It's this incredible journey that starts out with rules about loyalty and somehow ends with one of the most famous births in all of sacred history.
And that really brings us to the central question of this whole thing, right? How on earth does a rule about who you should be friends with, how does that lead to the story of the birth of Mary, the mother of Jesus? It seems like two totally separate ideas, but we're going to see just how masterfully the Quran connects them.
Okay, so first up, the passage lays down some really foundational rules for a believer's life, and it zeroes in on this one big idea: loyalty. Where should it lie? So we kick things off with verse 28, and right away you can tell this isn't just some simple do this, don't do that kind of rule. It's really getting at something deeper, about a believer's strategic and, heartfelt loyalty. Now that term disbelievers, in this context, it's referring to groups outside the early faith community. The verse is basically drawing the lines, asking, hey, who are you with? Where do you really stand? And to really get this verse, you gotta know two key Arabic terms. The first one is wali. This isn't just your casual buddy. It implies a really deep alliance, a kind of guardianship. So the Quran is talking about both political and emotional allegiance here. It's all about protecting the community's identity. But, and this is important, it also gives a very practical out, taqiyya. That basically means prudent self-protection if you find yourself in danger.
All right, so from there, let's look at the next couple of verses, 29 and 30, because you can see how the idea builds. After setting up these external rules about who you ally with, the focus immediately pivots inward to what's going on inside your heart and mind. It's a really direct, powerful reminder about God's knowledge and, well, where everything ends up.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that all those outward actions, all those allegiances, they don't mean a thing without inner honesty. The Quran is drawing a straight line from your actions to your intentions. It's saying, look, nothing is hidden from God, and one day every single soul is going to come face to face with what they've done. It's a call for total, complete sincerity. Now, with that foundation of loyalty and integrity set, the passage makes this amazing turn. It shifts into its emotional heart, moving from rules about who to trust to defining what it actually means to love God. And boom, here we are at verse 31. This is a big one. A lot of people consider this one of the most important verses in the whole Islamic tradition when it comes to the idea of love, or muhabbet. And it lays out a very direct and maybe even a little challenging definition of what it truly means to love God. This is just a brilliant illustration of a core idea. Love isn't just some passive feeling you have, right? It's not just something you say. According to the Quran, love is an action. It's something tangible, something you can see. It's following the path of the Prophet. And that action, that's the key to getting God's love and forgiveness back. Then, verse 32 comes right on the heels of that and makes the connection even clearer. It takes that idea of love as action and frames it in terms of obedience.
And that's really the bottom line. If love is shown by following, then obedience just naturally flows from that. You can't separate the two. Real devotion is all about listening to both God's authority and the guidance of the messenger.
Okay, so get ready for a big zoom out. The lens pulls way back now. We're moving from these personal principles of loyalty and love to this epic, grand sweep of sacred history. We're about to see how these ideas play out over generations. This is where we get to verses 33 and 34, and these are the verses that actually give this chapter its name, the family of Imran. And the point the Quran is making here is huge. Divine guidance isn't just some random thing. It flows through a specific, chosen line of people, a chain of prophets and righteous families. And you can almost picture it like a chain, this chain of sacred history. It starts right at the beginning with Adam, then moves through Noah, then to the family of Abraham, which is so foundational, and finally, it brings us right to the family of Imran. It's connecting all these incredible stories together. So after that huge historical timeline, the Quran does something amazing. It zooms right in, almost like a movie camera, onto one single, really intimate and incredibly powerful human story, the prayer of one woman. And here, in verse 35, we meet our hero, the wife of Imran. Her heartfelt prayer is what kicks this whole thing off. She pledges the child in her womb completely to God's service. I mean, talk about the ultimate act of devotion.
And there's this specific word she uses, maharar, which gets translated as consecrated, but it really means something more like liberated or freed. She's vowing that her child will be free from all worldly duties, just totally set aside for God's service alone. It's the highest form of commitment you can imagine.
Okay, and this is it. We've arrived at the climax of the passage. This is that moment where human plans crash right into the divine plan, where a single, personal prayer is about to become a world-changing event.
Verse 36 gets right to the moment of birth, and there's a twist. She says, "My Lord, I've delivered a female." You can almost feel her surprise. Her expectation was for a boy who could go serve in the temple, but that's not what happened. And yet, what does she do? She immediately names her Mary and commits her and all her descendants to God's protection. And this really gets to the heart of the story's tension, doesn't it? On one side, you have the mother's expectation, who we know from tradition as Hannah. She's thinking a son will fulfill her vow in the way she understands. But on the other side, you have the divine plan, which had something way bigger and totally different in mind. A daughter who is going to change the course of history. The verse then says something really powerful. And the male is not like the female. Now, this isn't some general statement about men and women. In this context, it's highlighting the totally unique, unprecedented, history-making role that this specific female, Mary, was destined to play. It's a role that a male simply could not have filled. So let's tie this all together. This is the absolute genius of how this passage is put together. It starts with these big abstract ideas, loyalty, sincerity, love being in action, and then it gives us the perfect concrete example. The deep devotion of Imran's wife is the love in action we heard about earlier. And it's that very act that plugs her family right into that grand chain of sacred history. We've gone all the way from a rule about allies to the story of a family whose loyalty literally changed the world.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The Quran shows us this mother's commitment as a kind of bridge, connecting her own personal life to the giant narrative of history. And so it makes you wonder, right? If devotion is that bridge, what kind of unexpected stories does our own commitment, our own loyalty set in motion for the future?